Hey, this is Unbearably. Penny's spider nest is one of her strongest tools, and where you place the nest can be the difference between it having no impact on the fight at all, or helping to secure a kill on an enemy flanker or tank, which allows your team to win the team fight with the numbers advantage. This video will be the first of a series that goes over the best places to put your spider nests and mines on every map. In this video, I will show you the best places to put your spider nests on the convoy map Yggdrasill's Path, both for defense and for attack, so that you can get the most value out of them. Now, not every nest and mine location is as good as the next, but I will try to show you a variety so that you can be flexible in your games and not feel like you need to place the nest in one certain spot every single time. That said, there are definitely times when one spot is the most preferred. To begin, a quick rundown of the spider nest itself, including some hidden features the game doesn't tell you. The nest has 350 life and produces a 12-meter web around it. Every 3 seconds, the nest produces 2 spider drones with a maximum of 10 out at a time. These drones target any enemies within the web and each do 40 damage. Penny can also extend the range of her nest's web with her other abilities like her dash, snare, or ultimate. A massive shout out to Alex Nguyen 6631 for pointing out in the comments of my last video that you actually can stack the heals from Penny's nest with her other webs. When standing on one of her webs, Penny gains 50 healing per second, which converts into an overshield at max HP, capping out at 150 extra life. Here I am showing you that with only 2 webs, the difference is minimal. However, once you stack up 3, the healing per second goes up to 75. And with 4 webs stacked on top of each other, it shoots all the way up to 100 heals per second. Knowing this means you could drop a few webs under your feet when you're between your nest and the enemy tanks, and be able to tank way more damage as you keep healing up. Finally, it's important to know that the nest has a max cooldown of 15 seconds, but if it's still at full HP, the nest can be disabled and recast right away. For every 25 damage dealt to the nest, it adds roughly 1 second plus 1 before it can be recast. So, if it only takes 25 damage, then it will have a 2-second cooldown. Here, for instance, it takes 200 damage, which would mean 8 plus 1, giving it a 9-second cooldown. There might be a more precise equation for this, but this seems close enough. While playing defense, Penny is great at creating a safe zone for your team to fight in, while also making it difficult for the enemy to push forward or to flank. Focus on setting up a defensive barrier with your spider nest, while laying traps for the enemy healers and flankers with your mines. Once the match starts, I race to the front and I set 1 to 2 good mine traps in areas that I expect the enemy healers to walk. I then place my nest on this ramp right here behind the ledge, which helps create a defensive line along this path. This also covers key areas with my web, like this ramp that the enemy loves to take, as well as the main road itself. Another option for when the enemy team has flanking characters or a Groot tank is I move the nest up here by this tree. This covers the back door from pesky flankers while forcing closer range tanks to move up the ramp to contest you. Each of these nests are in a good spot because they force the enemy team to move either around this bend or over the ramp if they want to contest them. With a few well-placed mine traps, the first point can be a really good position to hold. Here I did forget to place any mines before setting down my nest, so I lost a couple seconds before my next mine comes off cooldown, but this clip is still a great example of how a good setup with Penny can shut down a pushing team. Once the enemy team pushes up past that first ramp, there are 2 places to put your next spider nest. If you have the time to set up, destroying this tree and placing it behind this pillar is quite strong. You can stand in front of it and protect the nest with your body, so the enemy tanks have to come around the bend and into the open if they want to destroy it. I try to place a mine trap on top of this ledge to prevent the enemy from just shooting your nest from above, as well as along this back wall so I can hopefully catch a healer. If I can't reliably place my mines in one of these 2 spots, making a big anti-tank mine right at this bend is also quite effective. The secondary nest is another option and is better at supporting your backline, so if the enemy team has a diving comp, then consider using this spot instead. When in this position, try holding along this line while setting up mines to defend your flank on the right. Stay close to your nest and your healers and try to kill the enemy as they funnel through the choke point. In this clip, you see how well PENI can lock down a defensive line, and by using cover to force the enemies to come fight in the open, I'm able to set up a solid mine trap for when they start pushing forward. I also show how powerful stacking up 3 to 4 webs on top of each other can be. Like, look at my health as I'm taking damage, and how quickly it's not only healing up, but also getting an overshield if I ever hit max. Finally, if the card is about to be captured and there's a wild brawl for the point, just place your nest here as it can pump out damage and heal you while you're contesting the point. If your team wins the fight and the game still isn't over, quickly go place your nest at one of the previous locations. This next choke point is one of the best spots in the entire map to hold, as it funnels the enemy team around this corner and under the bridge. I start by placing a spider nest by this pillar and reinforce the area under the bridge with a mine trap for when the enemy tanks push forward. This creates a defensive line that is really hard for the enemies to push past, and realistically, if the rest of your team is also pulling their weight, can be almost impossible for them to move past without using an ultimate. I also like to place a couple mines along this back wall by the stairs, as sometimes the enemy healers will walk on top of them and I'll get a free kill. Here I started off doing alright by staying near my nest and using it to hold the space, and I even managed to get a couple kills. But once the enemy Invisible Woman ulted, or even after my nest was destroyed, I probably should have focused on getting back to my team and my backline, as my nest's job is to hold this space, not PENI on her own, and the healer ult can push past your nest even, so it was really time for me to get back. Instead of repositioning with my team, I then died and they were able to push forward. This final choke point can also be quite good to hold until your team gets wiped, because getting back through the door is next to impossible without a support ulti. So if you're able to hold it, then it can be quite strong, but as soon as you lose it, it's almost impossible to get back. I like to place my nest in this crevice or back behind the wall by the gate. Both are pretty similar in that the enemy needs to push forward up the road if they want to contest them, while they still also work to defend your backline from any flankers like Black Panther or Spider-Man. A mine trap on this ramp by the door almost always gets me kills on the flanking DPS, and if you're able to get a mine trap back behind this pillar, then the enemy healers will often die walking over it. If the enemy team has a flyer like a Storm or an Iron Man, they're able to get some pretty easy angles on these two spots though, so in which case you want to move your nest back behind this pillar on the right. This is a pretty good position where it can still be useful, although it's not as good at defending the cart itself and contesting the point against the enemy tanks. You just don't defend in here. You can help your team hold the enemy at the back of this hallway by placing your nest up close to the wall here. And if the webs don't wrap over on top on their own, then I extend it myself by webbing on top of this ledge. This stops enemies from walking up there and just destroying your nest from above. I also usually set a mine trap there, as well as along this back path, so that I can prevent any enemy flankers. Once the enemy cart has been pushed up to the bend, it's time to make sure that you move your nest way back behind this rock, and the new defensive line will now shift here. In this clip, you see that I ignored the previous room, so I could come set up in here, and after getting my nest and a couple mine traps down, I just let my good prep do all the work for me. In the final room, the best place to put your nest is right around this corner. This allows the web to contest the cart, which will both help damage the enemies on point, as well as keep you healed as you're contesting. Usually by this point in the game, there's not much time left to set up, so focus on placing your mines around the nest to help burst down the enemy tanks. If you do have a bit of time to prepare, but for some reason not enough time to set up in the previous room, then try to place a mine trap here or here to potentially catch a healer or flanking DPS. Next, we move to offense, where you want to focus on placing PENI's nests in locations where they can defend your backline from any pressure, or can help hold your team's progress after a good push. I also want to say that PENI does not work very well as a solo tank on offense. If you are the only tank on your team and it's your turn to attack, then you should probably switch to a better solo tank. The same thing applies for if your other tank switches midway through the round. While pushing as PENI, I like to place my nest on this ramp here. This lets its web extend over into the enemy defensive area while also being nicely protected from the enemy destroying the nest itself. Doing so also gives your healers a safe space to hang out while they keep the team up. I also try to get some mines out to help damage any tanks that push too far forward. And then, once the cart is moved up around the bend, I can move my nest here. This shifts the area where your team can comfortably fight and helps push the enemy team back. Playing PENI on attack is really all about securing the space your team captures. A slow push forward is still a push forward, and with PENI preventing the enemy from taking back any space, all it takes is a healer ult or a pick from a DPS for a slow push to quickly turn into a point capture. As my team turns the corner, I like to place my nests by these statues since healers like to play around this area. This also lets me heal from the web as I contest the point from this area of attack. If possible, I try to launch a web and some mines into the enemy back line. If we are closer to capturing and I want to prevent the other team from reinforcing, I can place my nest at this corner where with a nice mine trap, I could completely block the door. We were definitely already going to capture this point, but you can see how my nest helps prevent Rocket from contesting, as he gets focused by my team and the nest like the second he walks through the door. When coming around this bend, I usually just place my nest at this corner right here, as the enemy team would have to overextend if they want to deal with it. And this building on the right is like completely destructible, so hiding your nest in there doesn't last very long. If your team is stuck here, then place your mines at the corner with your nest for when an enemy tank tries to contest you, and wait for your team to push with a healer ult or when an enemy dies. Similar to the last corner, I place my nest in this bend right here by the pillar, but I also make sure to set some mines in the room up by these stairs so that the enemy can't just flank and destroy my nest. This gives me a solid position to contest the cart as it turns the corner, while also helping to defend my backline. If your other tank is able to distract the enemy team, then PENI can also play the role of flanker here by setting up her nest on the stairs and going through this door to sneak mine traps into the enemy backline. If she's able to take out a DPS or a healer, then your team is usually able to capture the point. You can see the enemy healers weaving forwards and backwards here while facing the cart. This makes it really easy for me to set up a mine trap right behind them and just wait for them to explode. If instead there's a massive brawl near the end of the point, I place my nest right here in this corner by the door, and then make sure to set a mine trap inside of this cave, regardless of the fight going on. Doing this stops any non-tank character that revives from being able to rejoin the fight without dying, and it's super powerful. Usually pushing through this tunnel entrance doesn't take too long, but I just place my nest behind this left pillar until the cart pushes forward or my team gets a pick. I don't use the right pillar because enemies can easily flank it through that room and destroy it. Once you've made it around the corner, I like to put my nest in this little bend here behind the rocks. It makes it very difficult for enemy tanks to push past this line, and also you could extend the web onto this upper platform, which helps shut down enemy ranged units and flankers. This is a really powerful nest location, and getting it set up pretty much locks down that side of the room for your team. This would not have been as effective if the enemy team was better at communicating, so I really wouldn't recommend using the nest to push forward and take space like this unless the enemy team is still respawning. That said, you can see how my nest in this spot forced the enemy tanks out of the entire room and back towards their spawn, and now Hulk can't push forward past these webs. Finally, if your team is fighting over the cart, I like to place mine traps at either door out of the enemy spawn and hide my nest right here between these rocks. This allows me to play between the two spawn doors and prevent enemies from ever leaving or getting close to contest the point. This is a great hiding spot for the nest because there's a nice little bend here where it's quite covered, and from here it will really shred anyone trying to contest the point while being behind the enemy, which makes them less likely to turn and face it or even see where the webs are coming from. Subscription. And that about wraps things up for this map. I want to thank each and every one of you who watched this video, or even my last one. I'm still new to this all, and I'm honestly really blown away by the positive reaction, so thank you guys all so much. If you liked this video and you want to see more, I would really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe, as that really helps me grow the channel. I plan on doing more of these, so comment down below which map you want me to cover next. Finally, if you want to learn the ins and outs of what it takes to get Grandmasters using PENI, click the link at the end of the video. See ya!
I'm fresher than fresh. I step out the steps and wall running for the flex. Pete told me I was next. I'm coming for next, it really isn't no question. Only super heels in a section, only big bangers on the set list. On top of buildings where I eat breakfast, then I shine like